I was going on a walk around my neighborhood. My neighborhood isn't dangerous by any means, but there are a lot of creepy 16-year-olds and a lot of drug addicts walking around erratic. I had my earbuds in and I was walking around, not really noticing it was getting dark. I listened to very loud music, and none of them really end or begin quietly, but one had a few seconds of silence at the end, and I heard something behind me. I turned around and there was a man, maybe 25 to 30 years old, and he wasn't just walking 5 to 6 feet behind me, he was 2 feet away from me. The man was just smiling and walking so close. I didn't know how long he was there, or if he was following me, but I still felt unsafe. I quickly said, "Sorry," in case I was in his way, and he didn't answer. He just kept smiling. I walked away quickly and put my earbuds back in, but turned off the music so I could hear him behind me. I heard him still behind me, and the first thing I did was call one of my friends and said, "Yeah, I'm coming. You have my location, right?" And they automatically knew something was wrong. I didn't go home because I didn't want to lead this person to my house, so I just continued to walk a while, and then I had said out loud so the man could hear me, "I'm almost there. You're with your dad, right?" And I glanced around nonchalantly a few times to see where he was, and after that he slowly started walking away, and he stopped smiling. Once he was out of sight, I ran home. This all happened exactly a year ago. I lived in a ground floor apartment with a very heavy foot traffic area. It used to be a corner storefront, so the living room windows were huge, and only one small one could be opened. I had a very violent upstairs neighbor, and even angrier dealers living across the street. I've had to make multiple calls to the police and give statements. Aside from them, the neighborhood was pretty lovely, and I got along well with all of my sane neighbors. One of my cats even became a local celebrity, thanks to a haunted Halloween tour that would stop at my corner every night to tell stories. The second he heard them, he'd sprint from wherever he was to jump up on the open windowsill and listen while they cooed at him. Anyway, because of the large windows, I didn't have any privacy in my living room. Usually I didn't mind this, because I'm a people watcher, and my cats also love the view. One night I was sitting at my computer desk in the living room just watching YouTube and sipping on a beer. I heard a group of people talking outside, but these were normal sounds for the area, and would have ignored it completely if I hadn't heard one of them speaking directly into the window fan in the open window. "Oh, she's drinking a beer. Doesn't she usually drink whiskey?" I spun around in my chair instantly, and then heard, "Oh shit, she saw us," and scuffling as they ran away. I could not see them because it was dark outside, but it sounded like there were at least 2 women and 2 men. I was frozen in place just listening for anything else, like footsteps or their voices again. It took me a while to fully realize what I just heard. I do typically prefer to sip on whiskey at night, but that day I wanted to try a new beer flavor I saw at the store. These people knew my habits well enough to know this. I was also deeply concerned that they knew it was whiskey, since I drink it out of a set of patterned glasses, and there was no way to tell what was in them. You could see the kitchen from the living room windows, but I often kept my whiskey in the freezer, so they'd have to see me at a specific moment to know. Needless to say, I didn't sleep that night. I remembered another incident that happened a few nights prior. I keep my bedroom window open at night because I sleep right under it, and I like the night air. There is a bright security light directly across the street, so even with the blinds down, I still have quite a bit of light hitting the opposite wall. One night, I woke up around 3 to 4 in the morning and just turned on a Netflix movie to fall back asleep to. While laying there, I see the shadow of a head and shoulders appear on the wall, and it just stays there for way too long. I guess it was there for 15 to 20 minutes. Now this isn't very common, but people have stopped to smoke a cigarette right outside my window before. The smell gives me an instant headache, but this time there was no smoke or smell of any kind. Someone was just standing there. I couldn't tell which way they were facing, but after the recent event I wondered if someone was looking in while they thought I was asleep. I told my coworkers about these events and they were terrified for me. I was actually planning on moving at the end of October and just slowly bringing boxes and furniture to my new place. Once they heard what had happened, they all banded together and got 75% of my things over there in one day. I told them all I cared about was my animals and my bed, but they got everything but the larger furniture and whatever we couldn't box up and move before midnight. I love them all very much and appreciate them every single day. I had a couple of anxiety attacks over this, especially when I had to go back from the last of my stuff, but I felt completely safe in my new home. I also got a full-blown security system with sensors and cameras. Unfortunately, this wasn't the first and ended up not being the last time I was watched or stalked. I'm a male college student aged 19, and today someone came up to my car and started asking me if he was headed in the right direction to his new job, which is on my campus. I said I don't know exactly, but tried to point him in the right direction. This guy had open wounds all over his face and bloodshot eyes. I said I don't know exactly. He then told me he was late and needed a ride to work. I said, number 1, I don't know how to get there. 2, I'm late for my job, which is in the complete opposite direction of campus. He said he doesn't care if it's in the opposite direction. He then gets closer to me and puts his hands on my half-rolled down window and whispered that he's been having a really rough time and can't lose his job, and pulled out a $10 bill to try and hand to me. I said no again, and then he leaned into my car to show me a text on his phone from his boss. His hands were 2 inches from my face, and I had a bad feeling, so I sped off, and I saw him walk away in the rear view. What was this guy going to try and do? When I was a kid, I don't remember exactly what the age, but it was probably when I was in middle school. My dad and I had paid a visit to a local library and decided afterwards we would walk down the street and read the historical marker at a very old elementary school nearby. The walk to the school was pleasant enough, and we started reading the rather interesting history the sign shared. It was around at this point that things got weird. We suddenly heard someone playing a guitar nearby and glanced around. There, coming down the sidewalk on the street towards us, was a younger-looking man strumming away on his guitar, seemingly zigzagging the entire way. What made this even creepier is that he appeared to have no expression on his face, and it sounded like he was playing the same set of notes over and over again. Becoming increasingly scared, I looked around fast, and thankfully, the sidewalk back to the library was still open. I tugged on my father's arm and said, "What do you say we go back to the library now?" He didn't hesitate after seeing just how disturbing this situation was becoming, and thankfully we made it out of there before this creepy man reached us. I thought he was a drunk and just out of it, but my father to this day believes he was on some sort of drugs. Regardless, he said something definitely wasn't right with him. This happened in a college town, so honestly could have been either. I'm honestly curious what people might think about what was going on with this guy, but let's just say it's not an encounter I want to have again. So this happened a few years ago when I was about 18. I'm 25 now, but I still think about it relatively often. Anyway, I was at a local gas station after my work shift. It was around 12 a.m., as I was a closer where I worked. I didn't actually need gas, I just stopped for a drink. So I parked in a parking spot rather than at a pump. As I walked out of the gas station, a tall, skinny man in his early 30s called out to me. He asked if I knew him. I replied that I didn't, and he asked if I'd like to. I told him I'd like to go home, that I'd just gotten off work and that I was tired. Now, it's important to mention that I was still wearing my work shirt and name tag. In hindsight, I realized this was probably not a great idea. I turned away from the man and started walking back to my car, and he started to follow me. He called me beautiful, said he liked my hair, and then asked me to give him a ride home. I politely declined and repeated that I was just trying to get home. He then told me he was harmless and asked again. I said no firmly, and he said okay, but then asked me for a hug. I declined the hug, but then he suddenly leaned forward and kissed my cheek. Then he ran around and hopped into my passenger seat. I felt sick and I screamed at him to get the fuck out of my car or I'd call the police. He put his hands up, said okay, and got out and started walking away. This isn't the end of the story, though. I ended up still telling police about him and found out that he has previous charges for drugs, sexual assault, and assault with a deadly weapon. I decided not to go to that gas station again. Remember where I said I had my work shirt and name tag? This is where that info becomes relevant. A few days later, while I was at work, we got a call. My boss answered it and said it was a call for me, from my Uncle Richard. I don't have an Uncle Richard. I declined the call. 2 days after that call, the man showed up at my work again, asked for me by name. Luckily, I was standing in the back by the security monitors and recognized him. My boss told him I wasn't there and let me work in the back for the rest of the day. I filed a police report for stalking and never saw the man again. I'm a biker. My friend and I go ride our bikes pretty often, and we always look for good spots to ride. A while back we found thick forest going downhill. We were over the moon because we've always wanted to try riding in a forest. We explored for a bit and found some good hills for jumps and stuff. After 2 to 3 hours of biking, we turn around and go home. And we've been going for about 2 weeks now. There is something unsettling about this place. Every time we left, I get this strange feeling like we were always being watched. One day my friend wasn't home, so I decided to go by myself. I did the normal routine, dodging trees and rocks, doing jumps, and just sitting on the edge by a lake. I decided to slide down and look for treasures, which was mostly junk to take home with me. I found the normal stuff, batteries, old clothes, shoes, alcohol bottles, but there was one thing I didn't expect to find. Leaning neatly against a tree was a notebook. It was leaning there as if someone had placed it there. The cover was made of wood and the pages were light brown. I picked it up, wondering why someone would throw it away. It was getting dark and I had to get home soon. I put the notebook in my backpack and went back up the ledge. I got back onto my bike and I was off. Remember how I said it feels like I'm always being watched when I leave those woods? Well, this time it was much more intense. I could feel someone's eyes burning into the back of my skull. When I looked around, I saw 2 white dots pointing at me. I thought that maybe it would be someone with 2 flashlights. I kept racing down. When I got home, I went into my room and started flipping through the pages. Nothing too much out of the ordinary, just a bunch of diary and journal entries in black ink. I didn't know why, but there was something slightly off about the writing. With every flip, the entries got slightly shorter, but also slightly disturbing. Page 1, I got a new puppy. Page 10, my puppy got hit by a car. Page 4, we found a blue bicycle in the woods. Page 14, a boy's decapitated head was on the handlebars. After page 20, there were no more diary entries, only pictures. Just like the messages, the pictures got slightly more disturbing with each flip of the page. On the last page, there was another picture, this time in red ink. It was a humanoid figure, hunched over like an old man with 2 white eyes piercing through your soul. I couldn't see the head. I closed the book and just locked it away in my drawer. I've had enough creepiness for one day. I still felt like something was off about that book, though. The curiosity made me unable to fall asleep. I picked up the book and looked closer and closer. I could feel my stomach drop when I realized that it was my handwriting. Thank you guys for watching and listening to the very end. If you would like to have your story featured on an upcoming video, email it to the email in the description box below. Until we meet again, stay sinful.